The sharp crack of a glass shattering against the floor cut through the ambient chatter at Chez Louis, one of the most upscale restaurants in downtown Seattle. Sarah Tucker froze, his 7-year-old daughter Emma's small hand clutched in his, as he surveyed the scene unfolding 3 tables away. A woman with copper-brown hair was leaning as far back in her chair as physics would allow, clearly trying to create distance between herself and the man looming over her, his face flushed with what appeared to be alcohol and anger. "I said I paid good money for this date," the man slurred, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "The least you could do is pretend to be interested." Sarah couldn't see the woman's face clearly, but he recognized the rigid posture of someone trying desperately to maintain composure while internally panicking. He'd seen that same posture in the mirror enough times after his wife died 2 years ago, leaving him a widower with a 5-year-old. "Daddy," Emma whispered, tugging at his hand. "That lady looks scared." Sarah hesitated. This wasn't his business. He was here celebrating Emma's good report card with the one fancy dinner they could afford this month. His construction job paid the bills, but just barely, with childcare costs eating up most of his paycheck. Still, Emma was watching him, her eyes wide with concern. "Stay here, sweetheart," he murmured, guiding her back into her seat. "Eat your pasta, I'll be right back." As he approached the table, he caught a glimpse of the woman's face striking, with intelligent green eyes now shadowed with alarm. The man had his back to Sarah, still talking in that too loud voice about how much the dating service had cost him. "Excuse me," Sarah said, adopting the calm, authoritative tone he used on construction sites. "Is everything okay here?" The man turned, revealing an expensive suit and a face contorted with entitlement. "Mind your own business, buddy." "Actually," Sarah improvised, looking at the woman, "I think I recognize you. Aren't you Emma's teacher's friend, from the school fundraiser last month?" The woman's eyes widened slightly, then understanding flickered across her features. "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Sarah, right, it's been ages." "Too long," Sarah agreed, then gestured toward his table. "Emma's right over there. She'd love to say hello if you have a minute." The man between them scoffed. "She's not going anywhere, we're on a date." "Which is clearly over," the woman said, standing up and gathering her purse. "Thank you for dinner, but I'm leaving now." "You can't just—" the man started, reaching for her arm. Sarah stepped between them, not touching the man but creating a barrier with his body. At 6'2", with the solid build that came from years of construction work, he made an effective obstacle. "She said she's leaving," Sarah said quietly. "Let's not make this more uncomfortable than it already is." The man glared, but something in Sarah's steady gaze must have convinced him this wasn't a fight worth having. He threw his napkin on the table and stalked away, muttering obscenities. The woman exhaled shakily. "Thank you. That was not going as advertised, I gathered," Sarah said. "The offer to join us is genuine, by the way. I'm Sarah Tucker, and that's my daughter Emma." "Danielle Donovan," she replied. "And I would love to join you too if that's really okay." "It's definitely okay," Sarah assured her. "Emma's the one who noticed you looked uncomfortable." She'd be thrilled to know she helped. As they walked to his table, Sarah felt oddly protective of this stranger. Danielle moved with grace despite the ordeal, her simple black dress suggesting elegance rather than flash. Not that he was noticing such things, he told himself. Emma's face lit up as they approached. "Did you save her, Daddy?" Danielle laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "He absolutely did. I'm Danielle. Your dad says your name is Emma." "Uh-huh. I'm 7 3/4. Emma beamed, revealing her missing front tooth. "Do you want some of my spaghetti? Daddy says it's rude to offer food someone else has eaten from, but I haven't touched that side yet." "Emma," Sarah groaned, but Danielle was already sliding into the booth beside Emma. "That's very thoughtful, but I think I'll order something for myself," Danielle said. "Though I must say that spaghetti looks delicious." "It's the best thing ever," Emma declared. "Way better than mac and cheese, but don't tell Daddy I said that because he makes mac and cheese every Tuesday." "Your secret is safe with me," Danielle promised, catching Sarah's eye with an amused look that sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. The waiter appeared, looking skeptical at the table rearrangement but taking Danielle's order efficiently. Sarah felt a momentary panic about the bill he'd budgeted precisely for this meal, and even that was a stretch but pushed it aside. He could figure that out later. "So," Danielle said after the waiter left, "you two were having a special dinner." "I got all A's and B's on my report card," Emma announced proudly. "Even in math, which is super hard." "That's impressive," Danielle said sincerely. "Math was my hardest subject too when I was your age. Did you get better at it?" Emma asked. "I did. I use it every day now in my job." "What do you do?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious. Something flickered in Danielle's eyes, hesitation, perhaps. "I work with numbers, budgets, projections, that sort of thing. Not very exciting. Daddy builds things," Emma volunteered. "Big buildings. He can lift super heavy stuff and knows how to use all the tools." Sarah felt his cheeks warm. "I'm a construction foreman," he clarified, "currently working on the new office complex downtown." "The Harborview project?" Danielle asked, something unreadable in her expression. "That's the one. We're about 8 months in, should finish on schedule next year if the weather cooperates." "I've heard it's an ambitious design." Sarah nodded. "The cantilever on the east wing is giving us some challenges, but we'll make it work." They talked easily through the meal, with Emma dominating much of the conversation, as 7-year-olds tend to do. Danielle listened attentively to Emma's detailed explanation of her school's upcoming science fair, offering suggestions that made the little girl bounce with excitement. Sarah found himself studying Danielle when she wasn't looking. There was something about her that didn't quite fit the narrative of a woman who needed rescuing from a bad date. She carried herself with quiet confidence, and though she was warm and engaged with Emma, he caught moments where she seemed to be carefully choosing her words. When the check came, Danielle reached for it smoothly. "Please, let me get this. It's the least I can do after you rescued me." Sarah hesitated. His pride wanted to refuse, but practicality won out. "Thank you, that's very generous." "It's nothing," she said, sliding her credit card into the folder without even looking at the total. "Consider it my good deed for the day, paying forward the kindness you showed me." As they prepared to leave, Emma asked the question Sarah had been carefully avoiding. "Are you going to see Danielle again, Daddy?" Sarah felt his face flush. "Emma, that's not, I'd like that," Danielle interrupted, surprising him. She pulled a business card from her purse and wrote something on the back. "My cell number. The one on the front is my office." Sarah accepted the card, glancing at it briefly. The front simply said D. Donovan with a phone number and email address, no company name or title. "I'll call you," he promised, meaning it. Outside the restaurant, they said their goodbyes. Danielle hailed a cab while Sarah and Emma headed toward the bus stop. "I like her, Daddy," Emma declared as they waited for the bus. "She doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby." "She seems nice," Sarah agreed, fingering the business card in his pocket. "Are you really going to call her? I said I would, didn't I?" Sarah smiled down at his daughter. "But it might just be for coffee or something simple. Don't get too excited." But Emma's expression said it was already far too late for that warning. 2 days later, Sarah sat in his truck during his lunch break, staring at Danielle's card. He'd typed her number into his phone 3 times and deleted it each time. What was he thinking? A woman like that, poised, elegant, clearly successful enough to casually cover a bill that had made him wince, wouldn't be interested in a single dad who was perpetually exhausted and barely making ends meet. But he'd promised both Danielle and Emma that he would call. With a deep breath, he dialed before he could talk himself out of it again. "Danielle Donovan," she answered crisply, sounding like she was in a professional setting. "Hi, Danielle. It's Sarah Tucker from the other night at Chez Louis." "Sarah." Her voice immediately warmed. "I was hoping you'd call." "I promised I would." He paused. "I was wondering if you might want to get coffee sometime, or there's a nice park near us that Emma loves if you'd prefer something less formal." "Coffee sounds perfect. When were you thinking?" They arranged to meet the following morning at a cafe near the construction site. Sarah hung up feeling both terrified and exhilarated. It had been so long since he'd done anything like this. After Maggie died, dating had been the furthest thing from his mind. There had been a few tentative attempts in the past year, mostly setups from well-meaning friends, but nothing had clicked. Something about Danielle felt different, though he couldn't quite put his finger on why. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, freshly showered after his early site inspection, but still feeling distinctly out of place among the business types with their laptops and designer clothes. He'd worn his cleanest jeans, and a blue button-down shirt Emma had insisted brought out his eyes. Danielle arrived precisely on time, dressed in a simple gray pantsuit that somehow looked more expensive than his entire wardrobe. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup that highlighted her natural features. "You look nice," she said as she sat down across from him, surprising him. "I was just thinking the same about you," Sarah admitted. "Though you seem dressed for something more important than coffee with a construction worker." "I have meetings later," she said vaguely, "but this is the most important part of my day." The cafe was busy, but they found a quiet corner where they could talk. Sarah learned that Danielle had grown up in Seattle, had no siblings, and loved hiking in the Cascades when she could find the time. She was deliberately vague about her work, describing it as corporate finance without elaborating. "And how did you end up on that nightmare date?" Sarah asked after they'd covered the basics. Danielle grimaced. "My assistant signed me up for an executive matchmaking service. She thinks I work too much." "Do you?" "Probably," she admitted. "But I love what I do. What about you? Have you been raising Emma alone for long?" Sarah nodded. "My wife, Maggie, died of ovarian cancer 2 years ago. It was, fast, 6 months from diagnosis to." He cleared his throat. "Anyway, it's been just Emma and me since then." Danielle reached across the table and briefly squeezed his hand. "I'm so sorry." "Emma is wonderful. You're clearly doing an amazing job with her. She makes it easy. She's the best thing in my life." Sarah smiled, thinking of his daughter. "My parents help when they can, but they live across the state, so it's mostly just us. No siblings to help out, a sister in Chicago. We talk often, but distance makes it hard for her to help practically." He shrugged. "We manage. The construction company has been good about letting me adjust my hours so I can drop her at school. After-school care is the budget killer, but it's worth it to know she's safe." Their coffee stretched to nearly an hour, and Sarah was reluctant to end it. "I should get back to the site," he finally said, "but I'd like to see you again." "I'd like that too," Danielle said. "Maybe something that includes Emma next time. I meant it when I said she's wonderful." Sarah felt something warm bloom in his chest. Most women he'd met since becoming a widower had viewed Emma as an obstacle, something to be tolerated rather than embraced. She'd love that. "She hasn't stopped talking about you since the restaurant." They made plans for the weekend, a trip to the science museum that Emma had been begging to visit. As Sarah walked back to the construction site, he felt lighter than he had in months. The museum outing was a success by any measure. Emma was in her element, dragging Danielle from exhibit to exhibit with boundless enthusiasm. Sarah hung back occasionally, watching the two of them together. Danielle never patronized Emma, answering her questions thoughtfully and asking ones of her own that made Emma think. By the third weekend outing, this time a hike to a waterfall that Emma declared was the most beautiful thing ever. Except maybe rainbows, Sarah realized he was in trouble. He was falling for Danielle Donovan, a woman who remained something of a mystery despite the time they'd spent together. After tucking an exhausted Emma into bed that night, Sarah sat on his worn couch and allowed himself to face facts. Danielle was kind, intelligent, beautiful, and somehow seemed genuinely interested in both him and his daughter. She was also clearly successful in ways he couldn't match and still keeping parts of herself hidden. His phone buzzed with a text from her. "Emma asleep. I had a wonderful time today. She's a remarkable kid," he smiled, typing back, "out like a light." She insisted on sleeping with the rock she found by the waterfall. "And thank you, I think she's pretty great too. You free for lunch tomorrow, just us?" Sarah hesitated only briefly before responding. "Definitely. Same cafe as before. Perfect. Noon. See you then." The next day, Sarah arrived at the cafe to find Danielle already waiting, looking slightly tense. She relaxed when she saw him, but something about her demeanor set off warning bells. "Everything okay?" he asked as he sat down. "Yes, no," she sighed. "Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I'm worried it might change things between us." His heart sank. Here it came, the gentle letdown. She'd realized a struggling single dad wasn't what she wanted after all. "I haven't been entirely honest about my work." she continued, looking directly at him. I'm not just in corporate finance, I'm the CEO of Donovan Enterprises. Sarah blinked, trying to process this information. Donovan, wait, as in the development company, she nodded. The very same. The company that's building the Harborview project, the one I'm working on. Yes. Her green eyes were steady on his. I didn't say anything at first because I was enjoying just being Danielle with you and Emma. Not the boss, not the CEO, just me. But I realize now that wasn't fair to you. Sarah sat back in his chair, mind racing. Donovan Enterprises was one of the largest development firms on the West Coast. They owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Seattle. And the Harborview project was their flagship development, a $500 million office and retail complex that had been featured in architectural magazines before construction even began. You're my boss's boss's boss, he said slowly. Technically, yes. But Sarah, it doesn't change anything about how I feel about you, about Emma. Doesn't it? He ran a hand through his hair. Danielle, you run a Fortune 500 company. I'm a construction foreman living paycheck to paycheck in a 2-bedroom apartment. And, she leaned forward. Sarah, do you think I care about that? These past few weeks have been the happiest I've had in years. When I'm with you and Emma, I'm not thinking about quarterly reports or board meetings. I'm just present, happy. Sarah wanted to believe her, but doubts crowded his mind. Your world and mine are completely different. They don't have to be, she said softly. Not if we don't want them to be. Before he could respond, his phone rang Emma's school. His heart immediately raced as he answered. Mr. Tucker, this is Nurse Phillips. Emma took a fall during recess and may have sprained her wrist. She's okay, but we think she should be seen by a doctor. I'll be right there, Sarah said, already standing. He looked at Danielle. I have to go. Emma's hurt at school. I'm coming with you, she said immediately, gathering her things. You don't have to, I want to, she interrupted. Unless you'd rather I didn't. The concern in her eyes was genuine, and despite his confusion about her revelation, Sarah found himself nodding. My truck's parked a few blocks away. Let's take my car, Danielle said. It's right outside and my driver can get us there faster. Sarah hesitated only briefly before agreeing. Every minute counted when Emma was hurt. The sleek black car whisked them to the elementary school in record time. Inside, they found Emma sitting in the nurse's office, her left wrist wrapped in an ice pack, tear tracks on her freckled cheeks. Daddy, she cried when she saw him, then her eyes widened. Danielle, you came too. Of course I did, Danielle said, crouching beside Emma while Sarah spoke with the nurse. How's the brave explorer doing? It hurts, Emma admitted. I was trying to climb to the top of the jungle gym to see if I could spot any birds like we did on our hike, but I slipped. That's what adventures are all about, Danielle said seriously. Sometimes you fall, but the important thing is getting back up again. Sarah returned to them, relief evident on his face. Nurse thinks it's just a sprain, but we should get it X-rayed to be sure. I've signed you out for the day, Emma Bear. I've already called ahead to Seattle Children's, Danielle said. They're expecting us and they'll see Emma right away. Sarah stared at her. How did you? I'm on their board, she said simply. It's one of the perks being able to help when it matters. In the car, Emma sat between them, leaning against Sarah's side but reaching out to hold Danielle's hand with her uninjured one. The gesture wasn't lost on Sarah, who watched his daughter finding comfort in Danielle's presence as naturally as she did in his own. At the hospital, they were indeed seen immediately. Emma's injury was diagnosed as a mild sprain, with instructions for rest, ice, and elevation. Throughout the entire process, Danielle stayed by their side, handling paperwork, asking thoughtful questions, and keeping Emma distracted with stories about the time she broke her ankle hiking in the Olympics. By the time they left the hospital, Emma's pain had subsided, and she was proudly showing off her wrist brace to anyone who would look. It's just like a cast, she explained to Danielle's driver, but I can take it off to shower. Where to? The driver asked. Sarah hesitated, then gave their address. The contrast between Danielle's world and his own had never been more apparent than when the luxury car pulled up outside his modest apartment complex. Some of the concrete was crumbling near the entrance, and a child's abandoned tricycle lay on its side near the stairs. Home, sweet home, he said, trying to keep his voice light but feeling the weight of the disparity. Can Danielle come up? Emma asked hopefully. She hasn't seen my room yet, and I want to show her my rock collection. Sarah looked at Danielle, who was watching him carefully. You're welcome to come up, he said. It's not fancy, but… I'd love to, she said simply. Their apartment was clean but undeniably small. The furniture was a mix of pieces Sarah had owned with Maggie and second-hand finds. Emma's artwork covered most of the refrigerator, and a basket of unfolded laundry sat on one end of the couch. Sorry about the mess, Sarah said automatically. What mess? Danielle asked, genuinely seeming not to notice. She was already being tugged toward Emma's room, which was painted a cheerful yellow and crammed with books, stuffed animals, and various treasures Emma had collected. Sarah busied himself in the kitchen, preparing a snack for Emma and trying to process the day's revelations. Danielle Donovan, CEO of a billion-dollar company, was in his apartment admiring his daughter's collection of interesting rocks and pine cones. The same Danielle who had spent 3 weekends with them, who laughed at his dad jokes, who seemed to genuinely enjoy their simple outings. When Emma finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the excitement and pain medication, Sarah and Danielle moved to the small balcony that overlooked a patch of communal grass. Thank you, Sarah said quietly. For today, for helping with Emma. You don't need to thank me for that. Danielle leaned against the railing. I care about her, and you, Sarah took a deep breath, about what you told me earlier, my job. Yes, your entire life, Danielle, I've been thinking about it and I don't see how this works. You and me, we're from different worlds. That's such a cliché, she said, but her tone was gentle rather than dismissive. Sarah, do you know what my life is actually like? I work 14-hour days. I have dinner alone in my condo most nights. I have acquaintances, business associates, employees, but very few people I would call friends. Real friends, she turned to face him. These past few weeks with you and Emma have been like coming up for air when I didn't even realize I was drowning. But the differences, what differences really matter, she challenged. Yes, I have money. Yes, my name is on a building downtown. But does that change who I am when I'm with you? Does it change how I feel when Emma takes my hand or when you laugh at something I say? Sarah studied her face in the fading light. No, he admitted, but people will talk. You're bored, your employees, let them, she said firmly. I've spent my entire adult life building this company, proving myself in a male-dominated industry. I've earned the right to find happiness on my own terms. And you think you could find that with a construction worker and his 7-year-old daughter? Danielle stepped closer to him. I already have. The question is whether you can see past my job title to the woman who's falling in love with both of you. The word love hung in the air between them. Sarah felt something shift in his chest, fear giving way to possibility. It won't be easy, he warned. The best things rarely are. She reached for his hand. I'm not asking for promises, Sarah. I'm just asking for a chance, for us to figure this out together. He looked through the sliding door at Emma, sleeping peacefully on the couch, her injured arm cradled protectively against her chest. Then back at Danielle, whose eyes held no pretense, no calculation, just honest emotion. Okay, he said finally. Together. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a beginning rather than a declaration. When they broke apart, Danielle smiled up at him. For the record, she said, that blind date was the best worst date of my life. How so? Sarah asked, his arms still around her waist. If he hadn't been such a jerk, you might never have stepped in. Emma might never have invited me to share her spaghetti. And I might never have found the family I didn't know I was looking for. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the main lobby of the Harborview complex, Emma beside him in her best dress, both of them watching as Danielle cut the ribbon at the official opening ceremony. She spoke confidently about sustainable development, community integration, and economic growth, all while occasionally catching Sarah's eye with a private smile. The past months had been an adjustment for all of them. There had been awkward moments when Sarah's crew realized who he was dating, raised eyebrows from Danielle's board members, and one memorable dinner party where a venture capitalist had assumed Sarah was one of the catering staff. But there had also been cozy family dinners in their apartment. Danielle refused to let them move, insisting she preferred the warmth of their home to her sterile condo. Weekend camping trips, where the CEO of Donovan Enterprises proved surprisingly adept at building campfires, and quiet evenings after Emma was asleep when they talked about everything and nothing. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed toward the reception, Emma tugged at Sarah's hand. "Can I go tell Danielle she did a good job? She was nervous this morning." "Of course, sweetheart. Just don't interrupt if she's talking to someone important." Emma rolled her eyes in that newly acquired preteen manner, despite still being months shy of 8. "Daddy, Danielle says we're the most important people in her life. She told me so when we were making cookies yesterday." Sarah watched as his daughter weaved through the crowd toward Danielle, who immediately excused herself from a conversation with the mayor when she spotted Emma approaching. The way Danielle's face lit up as she crouched down to Emma's level, listening intently to whatever his daughter was saying, told him everything he needed to know. One of the project managers sidled up next to Sarah. "Quite a woman you've got there, Tucker." "I know," Sarah said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "Never thought I'd see the Iron Lady of real estate development go soft over a kid," Sarah chuckled. "Don't let her hear you call her that, and for the record, she's not soft, she's just found her balance." As if hearing her name, Danielle looked up and caught his eye across the crowded lobby. With Emma's hand in hers, she began making her way toward him, navigating through Seattle's business elite with practiced ease. "There are my 2 favorite people," she said when she reached them. "What did you think of the ceremony? You were awesome," Emma declared. "Even better than when you practice in front of the bathroom mirror." Danielle laughed, the unguarded sound that Sarah had come to treasure. "Thank you for that glowing endorsement, sweetheart." "She's right," Sarah said. "You were amazing." He lowered his voice. "And this building isn't half bad either. The construction team did stellar work, if I do say so myself." "The best in the business," Danielle agreed, slipping her arm through his. "Now I have to make the rounds at the reception for about 30 minutes, and then I'm all yours for the rest of the weekend. Think you 2 can entertain yourselves that long?" "We'll manage," Sarah promised. "Actually, Emma and I have a surprise for you afterward." "A surprise?" Danielle's eyes lit up. "What kind of surprise? If we told you, it wouldn't be a surprise," Emma pointed out with impeccable logic. "But it's at home, so we have to go there after this boring party." "It's not boring, it's networking," Danielle corrected, then winked at Sarah. "But it is pretty boring." 35 minutes later, Sarah had timed it. Danielle found them near the exit. "Ready to escape, born ready," Sarah confirmed. They took Danielle's car back to the apartment that, despite her initial protests, now showed subtle signs of her presence: a cashmere throw on the couch, gourmet coffee in the kitchen, and a few expensive art pieces that somehow didn't look out of place among Emma's school projects. "So what's this surprise?" Danielle asked as they entered. "Close your eyes," Emma instructed, vibrating with excitement. Sarah guided Danielle to the living room while Emma darted ahead. "Okay, open them." Danielle opened her eyes to find the coffee table set with 3 cupcakes, each with a single candle and a small wrapped box. "Happy 6-month anniversary," Emma announced. "Daddy says that's not really a thing people celebrate, but I told him you deserve cupcakes anyway." "Emma's right," Sarah said, his arm around Danielle's waist. "You absolutely deserve cupcakes, and maybe something else too." He nodded toward the small box. Danielle's hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped it. Inside was a key on a simple silver keychain. "I know you already have a key," Sarah said softly, "but this one is different. This is us asking you to move in, to make this your home officially." "Really?" Danielle looked from Sarah to Emma, who was nodding enthusiastically. "We talked about it a lot," Emma said seriously. "And I'm willing to share the bathroom even though you take forever doing your hair sometimes." Danielle laughed, tears gathering in her eyes. "That's very generous of you, Emma." She turned to Sarah. "Are you sure?" "This place is so much smaller than what I'm used to." "That's the point," Sarah interrupted gently. "You've been living between 2 places for months now. I see how you exhale when you walk through that door, how you kick off your CEO shoes and become just Danielle. I want to give you that feeling permanently. We want to give you a home. Besides," Emma added practically. Your place doesn't have any good trees for climbing outside, and the neighbors are all old people with no kids. Valid points, Danielle acknowledged, wiping a tear. Yes. My answer is yes. As Sarah pulled her into his arms, he marveled at how far they'd come from that night in the restaurant. He'd gone to help a woman in distress, never imagining she would end up saving him in ways he hadn't known he needed. I love you, he whispered against her hair. Both the CEO and the woman who builds blanket forts with Emma. I love you too, she whispered back. The construction foreman and the man who holds our family together. Emma squeezed between them, wrapping her arms around their waists. Can we eat the cupcakes now? I helped make the frosting. As they sat around their small table, laughing and getting frosting everywhere, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most unlikely rescues lead to the most perfect outcomes. And that love, when it's real, bridges all differences, even those between a struggling single dad and the CEO who found her heart in the most unexpected place.